Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Not me. Wolves fill a unique role in Washington State's ecosystem. Let me tell you about the world's largest member of the canine species. First, we'll talk about the traits of gray wolves. Second, we'll talk about how gray wolves affect the ecosystem. Third, we'll talk about the threats to the conservation of gray wolves. And last, we'll talk about the difficulties of returning gray wolves. For wolves, it's not a dog-eat-dog world. The National Park Service states that gray wolves are famously social animals that hunt in packs. Through cooperative hunting, gray wolves are able to bring down larger animals that other carnivores cannot. When Washington's first wolves arrived, they found paradise. On average, Washington State's gray wolves live 6 to 8 years, according to the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. Compare this to Yellowstone Park, which first introduced them in 1995. Our wolves first came in 2008, and they already have a greater life expectancy, as Yellowstone's own wolves only live 4 to 5 years. Gray wolves obviously benefit from being in Washington State, but does Washington State benefit from gray wolves? When gray wolves first enter an ecosystem, they immediately have an impact on herbivores such as deer, elk, moose, and other ungulates. These animals are scared off from low elevation points where they can easily be hunted down and move to higher elevation points. Valleys and rivers, being low elevation points, now are able to recover their vegetation without so many ungulates grazing upon them. This food becomes a new source for other animals and further diversifies the life cycle in Washington State. Wolves also affect carnivores. When gray wolves make a kill, everyone is invited to the table. Scavengers such as coyotes, magpies, and ravens will come by after wolves have made a kill and take away what's left. However, for predators such as the bears, they will steal the kill outright by scaring the wolves off it. This means that bear populations immediately hold wolf populations in check and prevent them from becoming too large. Despite these benefits, the protections for gray wolves are being eroded. In 2011, the federal government delisted gray wolves from the Endangered Species Act in the eastern one-third of Washington State. This eastern one-third of Washington State is now under the sole discretion of the Washington's Department of Fish and Wildlife. This change in authority meant that the fee for killing a gray wolf went from $100,000 at maximum to $5,000 at maximum. It gets worse, as the eastern one-third of Washington State houses the vast majority of gray wolf packs. Furthermore, in 2020, the Trump administration officially delisted the gray wolves nationwide from the Endangered Species Act, meaning that only 2/3 of Washington State recognizes the gray wolf as an endangered species. And in those 2/3, they're now at threat of being delisted by Washington State itself. Despite these changes that some would say is terrible, there are those who say they are a welcome change. Gray wolves were first eliminated in Washington State in the 1930s by livestock owners and government extermination programs. The return of gray wolves brings back these old problems. When gray wolves are given the chance, they will injure and kill livestock. This has a direct effect on the livelihoods of livestock owners. It gets worse, as programs meant to accommodate the return of livestock under the threat of gray wolves has been strained before and will probably be strained in the future. In 2008, the Damage Prevention and Cooperation Agreement for Livestock gave out $250,000. This money goes out to people or livestock owners who implement non-lethal preventative measures. After the $250,000 were given out, though, funding effectively ran out and livestock owners were left with the bill. In summation, gray wolves will continue to uniquely affect Washington State's ecosystem if properly accommodated. To review, we've looked at the traits of gray wolves, how gray wolves affect the ecosystem, how gray wolf conservation is under threat, and the difficulties of continued gray wolf conservation. This understanding, if applied correctly, will allow gray wolves to uniquely affect Washington State's ecosystem for years to come. For as we've seen, when it comes to balancing an ecosystem, there's no such thing as a lone wolf.